the great American wilderness, vast, untamed, and brimming with beauty. But what happens when that beauty hides something else? Something older than time, older than the forests themselves. Beneath towering peaks and among the whispering pines, a ranger stumbles upon an abandoned campsite. The scene, disturbed, eerie, and wrong. Then, the disappearances begin. Across the country, in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, another ranger patrols the misty trails, only to uncover his own nightmare. Hikers speak of unsettling encounters, a presence just out of sight, and deep in the underbrush, clues to something that shouldn't exist at all. Step into the abyss, and welcome to Weird Encounters, a place where the ordinary fades into shadow and the unexplainable comes alive. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and join our ever-growing community of the curious. Your support is the lifeblood that keeps this channel alive. Now, prepare yourself, for what you're about to witness is not for the faint of heart. Out in the vast, untamed wilderness of Glacier National Park, where the mountains loom like ancient sentinels and the dense forest swallows the last light of day, strange things have been happening. Disappearances, eerie sightings, and a discovery that challenges everything we know about the creatures that call these lands home. In this story, we follow the account of a seasoned park ranger who stumbled upon something that should not exist, something the authorities don't want you to know about. I don't know if I should be telling this story, but after months of keeping it to myself, I need to get it off my chest. I've been working as a park ranger in Glacier National Park for the better part of 15 years. In that time, I've seen plenty of things most people wouldn't believe. Wildlife encounters gone wrong, hikers who vanished without a trace, footprints in the snow where no human or known animal should have been. But what I saw in 2022 is something I'll never forget, no matter how much I try. It started in September 2022, right at the end of the busy tourist season. Most of the summer visitors had packed up and gone home, and the park was settling into that eerie kind of quiet. It always does, before the first snowfall. It was a late afternoon when I was sent to check on a report of an abandoned campsite near Many Glacier, one of the more rugged and remote parts of the park. The site had been flagged by a backcountry permit officer, no recent activity, no checked-out hikers associated with it, yet it had clearly been used. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was that the tent was slashed open from the outside, not torn by wind or an animal scavenging for food. This was deliberate, like something with claws or a blade had ripped through the fabric in long, jagged strokes. The sleeping bags were still inside, zipped up but empty, as if whoever had been there had disappeared in a hurry. The strangest part. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no tracks leading away, just silence, as if the whole site had been frozen in time. I did a quick sweep of the area and radioed in my findings. Dispatch told me there were no missing persons reports in the region that fit the timeline. But something wasn't adding up. It felt wrong, unnatural, like I had just stepped into the scene of something that had gone horribly, inexplicably wrong. As I was about to leave, something caught my eye near the tree line. At first, I thought it was just the way the shadows were playing against the fading sunlight, but when I looked closer, I saw a shape. Tall. Too tall. At least 8 feet. It wasn't moving like a bear or any large mammal I've seen out here. It was standing still, like it was watching me. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but before I could move, it took one slow step forward. That's when I saw the head, elongated, almost like a wolf's, but with features that seemed somehow wrong, twisted, unnatural. I reached for my radio, but the second my hand moved, the thing bolted into the trees at a speed that wasn't human or animal. It was too fast, too quiet. The forest should have erupted in sound, twigs breaking, branches snapping under its weight, but there was nothing. Just the lingering sense that I had seen something I was never supposed to. I didn't sleep that night. I kept telling myself it was just a trick of the light, a bear on its hind legs, a lone wolf. But I knew better. The next morning, I went back with another ranger to investigate. We scoured the area but found no tracks, no fur, nothing, except for one thing. About 50 yards from the abandoned campsite, hidden under a cluster of fallen logs, we found a skull. Not a bear. Not a moose. Something else. It was massive, almost 3 feet in length, and didn't match any known species in the park. The bone was smooth, but the structure was all wrong, too thick in some places, too delicate in others, as if it belonged to something that had never been officially recorded. The eye sockets were deep and slanted, almost predatory, and the jaw structure suggested it had once been filled with long, serrated teeth. We immediately radioed it in. Within 2 hours, a team from the National Park Service arrived, along with 2 men who didn't identify themselves. They weren't wearing ranger uniforms, and they didn't ask the usual questions. Instead, they took the skull without a word and told us to clear the area. I pressed them, asking what we had just found, but one of them simply said, "This isn't your concern." And that was it. The skull was gone. No report, no record, nothing. Just another unsolved mystery swallowed by the wilderness. In the weeks that followed, things got even stranger. We started getting more reports from hikers, whispers of something big moving through the trees at night, a feeling of being watched while trekking the high trails, low growls in the distance that didn't match any known predator. One veteran hunter who had been tracking elk in the area for years told me flat out that he was never coming back. He claimed he had seen something massive, something walking on 2 legs, but it wasn't a bear, and it wasn't human. And then the disappearances started piling up. A solo hiker, last seen near Swift Current Pass, vanished without a trace. His gear was found intact, his food supply untouched, his footprints leading up the trail, and then suddenly stopping, as if he had been lifted off the ground. No drag marks, no animal signs. Just gone. A local guide reported his dog whimpering and refusing to go near a certain section of the forest, its ears pinned back, hackles raised. He swore he heard low breathing from the trees, but when he turned his flashlight on the area, there was nothing there. Even some of the older rangers, guys who had worked the park for decades, stopped going into the backcountry alone. One of them told me, "There's something out there, Greg, and we're not meant to find it." Now, I keep my mouth shut when I'm on duty. I've already been warned, subtly of course, that talking too much about what I saw isn't in my best interest. But I know what I saw, and I know that thing is still out there. I don't know what it is. An undiscovered predator? Something ancient? Something that's been here longer than we have? But it's watching, and it's hunting. If there's anyone else out there who has seen this thing or found evidence of something like it, I need to know. Because if this creature is real, and I know it is, we are not the top of the food chain in these woods. Deep within Yellowstone's rugged wilderness, where the mists swirl over geysers and ancient trees, a chilling secret lurks in the shadows. In this story, we hear from a seasoned park ranger whose encounter with an unspeakable creature and the discovery of something that hints at a forgotten terror forces us to confront a mystery far darker than any legend. I've sat with these memories for too long, and every time I try to put pen to paper, the words seem to scramble in my head, as if the forest itself is trying to erase what I witnessed. My name is Mike S., and for over 15 years, I've patrolled the vast stretches of Yellowstone National Park. I've seen the raw beauty of erupting geysers and the graceful dance of bison across the plains. But nothing prepared me for that October night in 2022, a night that nearly drove me to the brink of madness. It was late October and the air had turned bitter, the temperature plunging as an almost unnatural fog swallowed the landscape. I was on a routine patrol near the Little River area, a secluded section of the park that local lore claims is cursed by old spirits. Recently, there had been whispers among hikers and even some of my fellow rangers about strange figures lurking at the edge of vision and unexplainable sounds echoing through the pines. Then, that fateful week came when a young hiker disappeared along a rarely traveled trail near Clingman's Dome. His vanishing, along with several other unexplained disappearances, sent a shiver down my spine. That night, I set out into the damp, shadowed trails, every step heavy with foreboding. The fog was so thick I could barely see my own hand in front of my face. As I moved deeper into the forest, the usual sounds of night were muted, as if the woods had suddenly gone silent in anticipation. My flashlight beam cut a thin swath of light through the darkness, revealing only twisted silhouettes of ancient trees and moss-draped boulders. I wasn't alone. Every rustle in the underbrush felt like a whisper, every gust of wind like a warning. After what felt like hours of searching, I came upon a rocky outcrop near Deep Creek. There, partially buried in the soft, wet earth and entangled in creeping vines, lay a giant skull. I remember my breath catching as I knelt down. This skull was enormous, nearly 3 feet in diameter, with a high, arching brow that gave it an almost regal yet grotesque appearance. Its deep, hollow eye sockets seemed to glow faintly with an eerie, otherworldly light, and the jagged, uneven edges of its jaw hinted at a monstrous bite that defied any known creature in our records. I couldn't tell if it was fossilized or something more recent, but the unnatural luminescence clinging to it made my skin crawl. I immediately radioed in my find, but the response was nothing more than crackling static. I was left alone with the skull, and soon the forest seemed to close in around me. As I struggled to regain my composure, a series of disturbing reports began to filter in over the following days. Local hikers described seeing a tall, gaunt figure, its body impossibly thin, with limbs that elongated and twisted unnaturally, as it moved silently among the pines near Clingman's Dome. One group of backpackers told me that, at twilight, they caught sight of a creature with eyes like smoldering coals, its gaze so intense it seemed to burn through the fog. A seasoned hunter, a grizzled man from a nearby town, recounted hearing guttural roars and mournful cries in the dead of night, sounds that were part animal, part something far older and crueler. I also received an account from a woman who frequently hikes the isolated trails along Yellowstone's northern edge. In hushed, trembling tones, she described an encounter that nearly cost her her life. A moment when she found herself face to face with a massive silhouette that emerged from the shadows. Its face, if it could be called that, was a blur of sinewy muscle and distorted features, and its eyes shone with an unsettling intelligence that chilled her to the core. She claimed that as soon as she locked eyes with it, she felt an overwhelming surge of despair, as if the creature was peering into her very soul. The mystery deepened when I was summoned to a secure meeting at park headquarters. In a stark, cold conference room, I was grilled by high-ranking officials whose expressions were as inscrutable as the mists outside. They demanded every detail of my patrol that night. The fog's density, the sound of the creek, even the precise angle of the rocky ledge where I'd found that unearthly skull. Their questions were invasive and chilling. It was as though they feared the truth might spill out and shatter a carefully constructed silence. They made it abundantly clear that my findings were to be kept under wraps. I was warned, in no uncertain terms, that speaking of this event could jeopardize more than just my career. Their cold, measured tones and the threat in their eyes still haunt me to this day. After that meeting, anonymous tips started trickling in from within the Park Service. A retired ranger who wished to remain unnamed confided that he'd witnessed inexplicable electrical anomalies, strange, glowing orbs hovering just above the forest floor, and mentioned that a similar skull had been found years ago in a remote area of the park. Another source hinted at government cover-ups tied to these events, suggesting that the disappearances and the creature sightings were part of something much larger, a secret project or an ancient curse hidden from public knowledge. These accounts, coupled with my own experiences, painted a picture of a force that had haunted Yellowstone for centuries, an ancient cryptid that defied our modern understanding of nature. I've since tried to piece together these scattered fragments of evidence, but every lead seems to vanish like smoke in the wind. Local legends speak of the ancestor, a primordial being said to roam these wilds, a guardian or perhaps a harbinger of doom. Some even claim that its skull carries the mark of an ancient, cursed lineage, one that predates humanity itself. The thought is as fascinating as it is terrifying, and I've found myself tormented by the possibility that the creature responsible for these vanishings is not of this earth, but of a forgotten age. I continue to record these events in my private journal, though I've been cautioned, both implicitly and explicitly, to keep these writings out of public hands. The fear of attracting unwanted attention from those who wish to keep these secrets hidden is a constant, oppressive shadow over my everyday. Yet, I cannot remain silent. I have no clear answers, only a deepening sense of dread and a growing conviction that Yellowstone harbors a darkness beyond our comprehension, a darkness that is as ancient as the mountains themselves. Every detail of that foggy October night is etched into my memory, a constant reminder that some mysteries in the wild are meant to remain buried, and that sometimes the line between nature and nightmare is disturbingly thin. Pray that by sharing these experiences, we may someday unravel the mystery behind the disappearances, the monstrous skull, and the elusive creature that haunts the heart of Yellowstone. My dear watchers, your presence is a gift. Thank you for your time, your curiosity, your courage. But remember, there are others who wander, unaware of the dangers that await. By liking this video and subscribing, you offer them a light in the darkness. Support our channel and keep the stories coming, simply by giving a thumbs up and subscribing and sharing.